Motorsport Radio.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ray from the Kawasaki Racing Team.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Jamie Chadwick.
Hey everyone, I'm Bradley Smith.
Hi, I'm Joan Zarco.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wright.
Hi, I'm Seb Morris.
Hi, I'm Dan Linfoot from Honda Racing, British Superbike Team, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Motorsport Talks. And we are this week discussing a very special WRC and Monte Carlo Rally preview. Joining me, as always, is the ever faithful Andy Lloyd. Now, Andy, I will kick off straight away by saying the previous WRC era, of course, as we know, Group A and all that lot. But what was your most iconic moment from that era?
Well, I think that there's been a number. I mean, the rallying has been unbelievably spectacular throughout that period. But I think there's probably two moments for me. I mean, bearing in mind that my background is sports cars, and I'm not as engaged with rallying as I'm sure others are. But that aside, I think Carlos Sainz throwing his helmet through the back windscreen of his car, I think it was in 97. I think that was the Rally GB that year when his car packed up just before the finish line. I remember that. But I also think more recently, I think you've only got to look back to last season and the first victory of Kalle Rovanperä at the Estonian Rally. And I know we're going to talk about this later on, but I think that was significant. I think this is the start of a new era, and that is a name that is going to be at the top of rally leaderboards, possibly for the next 15, 20 years. So that is definitely a name to watch. What about yourself, Josh? What stands out to you from the last few years of WRC?
Well, for me, it's only one. And it is, I think, everyone who has watched Rally, and if you haven't, look it up on YouTube, it's brilliant. And it was Colin McRae in Rally Cyprus when he rolled his car, because as we know, Colin McRae, absolute legend of the sport. And he, I think, was an incredible rally driver. He always took immense risks. When you'd watch it on boards, you'd sit there with your eyes closed because you take cuts that you're thinking you cannot do. And he hit a bridge parapet in Cyprus, rolled the car. You think, oh, his rally's over. Nope, he got back in it and rallied on. He then went back to the service area, repaired where Ford did a bodge job of a repair by bending panels into a sort of a straight line, but in no way were they straight. The windscreen was cracked, the roof was caved in, the doors didn't shut properly, etc. Second stage, very fast section. He took a corner that was a fourth gear corner into sixth gear, trying to make up time, and he rolled it again. Broke the car this time properly. You're thinking, now surely this is it. No, he repaired the car himself, bodged it, and what can only be described as the rest of the stage rallying along with Nicky Grist holding his arm out of the window, holding the door shut, one hand, the other hand using, he's trying to read out pace notes. The car looked an absolute mess. Every time whenever a jump, the route came up. This is his Ford Focus, one of his, I think, most iconic cars. And it actually got pulled over by the police by not being roadworthy, because obviously back then, more than they do now, the cars would travel between stages on the road. They'd drive on the road, hence why they had number plates. He got pulled over by the Cypriot police because the car was not roadworthy. It was an absolute state. Even Malcolm Wilson said that's never going to repair, but it worked just about. And he finished second in the rally, which is an incredible moment, bearing in mind he had two huge accidents. And that, for me, that helicopter image of the car going past with Nicky Grist's arm out the window, which was smashed, holding the door shut because the door was so broken that it didn't actually shut anymore. That was an image of this era. But for those of you at home that are sitting there thinking, WRC 2022, why should I watch it? Well, let me give you a few points about why. One, it's a whole new era. So you like us, are starting from scratch, okay? You know, you don't have to watch last year's. You don't have to do like most of them. Loads of thinking, we've got to catch up with the season reviews. You can start from scratch. It's a whole new era, brand new cars. The teams have got brand new cars. It's a lot of brand new drivers. Two, we've got some very strong British contingent, even though, as we'll discuss later on, why there's no Rally GB. We've got a very strong British driver lineup. And three, the most famous team, M Sport, is celebrating its 25th year in the sport. And I think it actually has the best chance of winning it has done arguably since Colin McRae drove for him. Andy, what would you say is the main reasons why people should tune in and watch for their first time this year?
I think for me, is if you are interested in motorsport and you have watched either single-seaters or sports cars prototypes over the last few years, you'd have got very used to, by and large, immaculately prepared circuits, beautifully prepared cars. Yes, unfortunately, there are offs and accidents, but by and large, the spectacle is beautifully presented. That is not WRC. You know, WRC, if you look at the Acropolis Rally or the Safari Rally, it's brutal. It's dirt tracks. It's cars being pushed to their absolute limit. And it always looks fantastic. Yes, it's not cars racing head-to-head. It's cars racing against the clock. But as a spectacle to watch, it is absolutely fantastic. So I would thoroughly recommend anybody who's not taken an active interest in rallying before or for some time to definitely keep an eye on this year's World Rally Championship.
Definitely. And as you know, it is, I mean, even for me, I love rallying. I'm not a massive rally fan. I used to find it, dare I say, boring because, you know, there wasn't much competition. Last year, it was absolutely incredible. There were stages where you'd be, you know, Elfin Evans, for example, would be racing to the finish line and you're thinking there going, will he finish first, second or third? And it's like, there's like 0.3 of a second in it. It's a 27-kilometre stage and there's 0.3 of a second in it. Also, the onboards. If there's one reason why you should watch rallying, it's the onboards of the drivers doing things in their car that you think is impossible, going down tracks that are barely wide enough to fit their car through at 170 kilometres an hour, 200 kilometres an hour, going up Monte Carlo, the Col de Torini, on ice, black ice, at over 100 mile an hour. You know, it's that sort of thing. There is so much reason to watch it. And also, thanks to the partly FIA and WRC, they have actually set up a sort of streaming service where you can watch it all from your home. WRC Plus, look it up online, Google Play, Android, whatever. £11 a month, or I think it's £100 a year to watch the whole season, and it is so worth doing it. But Andy, now we're just going to take a little step back a bit and talk a bit more about this era of rallying that we have just left behind. Now, obviously, there are some incredibly iconic cars. You know, we're talking about the Subaru Impreza, you know, the Toyota Celica, Ford Focus, whatever. What for you would be the most iconic car of that era?
Well, I think you just mentioned the two that are the most iconic cars. I think the Subaru Impreza, the blue with the white livery on it, the yellow livery on it, was absolutely iconic. But I think the one that stands head and shoulders above them all for me is the Toyota, as you mentioned, the Toyota Celica, the GT4 of the early 90s in the Castrol livery. I mean, the car was a beautiful car to start with, and it was only added to with the additions for WRC, the Didier Auriol, Bernard Ocelli car, the 93 championship winning car, I think will stand as one of the most beautiful rally cars of all time. I think that car actually came up for sale about 2 or 3 years ago. It only sold for, I think it's only about 250,000. And I was thinking, that's astonishing, because I think even I would have tried to have bought it for that kind of money. It was such an icon. But I think that would probably stand out to me as an iconic car of the era. What about yourself, Josh?
Well, for me, I'm going for something a bit more modern. Loeb, who is arguably one of the greatest rally drivers of all time, currently with 9 titles, and he is back, ladies and gentlemen. Sebastian Loeb is back where he belongs, in the driving seat of a rally car. And I'm going for him driving, and I believe he wasn't driving it, but I believe he was competing against it, and I think rightly Robin Pera was driving it, and it is the 307 Coupe, which the reason I picked it out is, one, because no one remembers it, despite the fact it being very successful for that season it ran. B, it's got an iconic livery, which is that red Peugeot livery that we've become accustomed to on the 206. And 3, it was a convertible that was converted to a hardtop for rallying. And I think that's something that takes a lot of engineering now, an ability to get a convertible, make it so it's light enough to compete with the hatchbacks and the coupes of the time, and yet make it competitive as well. It looked very, very good. And I think the 307 Coupe was an incredible car, but not long enough, in my view. It only hung around for about 2 seasons. And I think it is incredible. And I think it would have won had Loeb not been competing in the C4 Coupe. But let us know what you think, of course. If you're a WRC fan like myself and you remember this past eras through the 2000s and 2010s, what was your most iconic moment? What was your most iconic car of the era? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, comments, everything. We are absolutely everywhere. You cannot miss us. We're even on Audible. If you've subscribed to that, maybe listen to us on your way to work tomorrow morning, or this morning. If you listen to it tomorrow morning, you get the idea. Let us know. As I said, we always like to read your comments, and quite often disagree with them. But if I was to ask you, Andy, what was your sort of, I know we know about Robin Pera winning his first rally in Estonia, but what would you say was the standout moment of last year's rally championship? For those of you that, although people have missed it, you don't need to catch up on it for this year.
I don't think there was one particular standout out moment. I think it was the consistency of Ogier. I think that stood out across the whole season. But I think it was how competitive the season was. And when you look at people like Thierry Neuville, pushing as hard as he possibly could. He took a couple of wins, took wins in Belgium and Spain that showed that when his car was working, he could be very competitive, and he could possibly have challenged for the title, but for the fragility of the Hyundai. But I think, as I say, coming back to that point about Robin Pera's first win in Estonia, I think that was an astonishing achievement. I mean, that guy's been rallying since he was barely a teenager, and to get to where he is now, I think he was 20 last year when he took that win. His first win in the WRC was something that was quite astonishing.
Yeah, and also the fact that he won it in Estonia, which was only added to the calendar really late on. It was one of those literally just a last minute, bang, there you go, we're going to Estonia now. So none of the drivers knew Estonia. Everyone struggled with it. It was a very fast rally, but it was very, very sort of tedious as well, in the way that the cars struggled with the speeds and the heat that Estonia delivered. But Robin Pera, this youngster, appeared out of nowhere in this Yaris, which as obviously I would say was probably the best car of last year, and he just dominated that. I remember that rally, and he just dominated it. And it was one of those.
I think he won by he sort of finished about almost a minute ahead of everybody else, which in WRC terms is is like a couple of laps in Formula One. So really was an amazing performance.
As I said, and he's only 20, and he beat Ogier, who's got 8 titles. He beat Oit Tanak, one of the more competitive. Elfin Evans, who has come second twice, 2021 and 2020. He even in the Toyota camp was nowhere near considered to win. He was one of those that's supposed to finish in the top 10. And that, for me, was a good one. But for me, I think it was the most emotional section, which was Monza, the last day on Sunday. Elfin Evans spinning out on one of the last stages and losing the title in what was basically a very soggy, misty, damp, cold Monza. Where last year they rallied on the old Monza circuit and on the off-roads and on the park and all this, and it was very difficult. Elfin Evans throughout the whole season had kept up with Ogier, had competed with Ogier, and at times beat Ogier. But on that day, he just spun out. Simple mistake to make, going from mud to tarmac, and he just lost 5-6 seconds. That was enough to lose the rally. And it was just like, twice now he's come second, and twice he's lost it at Monza. So I think he'll be very happy more than any to see that Monza's not on the calendar this year.
Yeah.
But what would you say? Because obviously we've got Ford versus, we mentioned Toyota, we mentioned Hyundai, how competitive were, but we didn't mention Ford. So 2021, Andy, Ford was obviously nowhere near its best. Would you say that they were thinking about this car and not bothering with that car, if you know what I mean?
I think the approach that Ford take is that they are effectively a semi-works funded drive. They haven't got the budgets of Hyundai and Toyota, and they do their best with what they've got. And I think they had very much had their eyes set on 2022 rule changes, regulation changes, a new car. And as we know, we've seen it in other series, that when you change the rules, you can get a break. If you've done your homework, and they've worked very hard pre-season with the Puma, that you can go into the new season potentially with an advantage. So I think they had their eyes very firmly set on 2022 and making the best of the new era of WRC.
Yes, they did. And as I said, it was frustrating for Ford because, they constantly had punctures, they had engine failures, suspension failures. I mean, it's not easy to compete in WRC 2020 or any WRC, let alone last season, which had Kenya and Estonia and all this sort of stuff. But it was frustrating for me because Ford, I think for a lot of people, M Sport is a team that everyone likes. It's one of those little teams that you don't expect to do well, but they've done really well and all this. And I think 2021 was one of those seasons where you just got to brush it under the carpet and look ahead to the new 2022 season. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start off with, of course, the opener, the legendary opener, the historic opener set in the French Riviera. So, Andy, the Monte Carlo Rally, describe it as I'm happy, as I'm sure you're happy for me to tell everyone, you're a bit of a novice rally fan. So, in your eyes, how would you describe Monaco or Monte Carlo?
First of all, it's a very historic rally. It's been one of the sort of the very first global events, shall we say. And of course, it's at the very start of the season. It's in the very middle of winter, and it's very weather dependent. Now, it's interesting that when we look at the weather forecast for this weekend, it looks actually quite benign. So this could be quite a different Monte Carlo rally, maybe less ice and less slow than we've seen in previous years. But it's a very tight, twisty circuit. You make a mistake in Monte Carlo, it's probably going to be the end of your rally. And of course, it is the first. So everybody is pushing as hard as they possibly can. They're going to be in new cars. And I think one of the things that we need to bear in mind about these cars is that these are not just hybrid cars with a 1.6 litre turbo engine connected to an electric motor, but they're also using regenerative technology as well. So they can harvest energy as they go round to use it. Once they've got, I think it's 30 kilowatts saved up, they can then apply it, they can then use it. It's going to make rallying quite different because you're going to be thinking, approaching some corners, am I going to use this as a corner to save some energy so that I can use it later on? So it's not going to be necessarily a case of going flat out all the time, because you may be looking at times when you're going to want to use your regenerative system. Everybody knows that this is going to be a different way of approaching a rally and a different way of driving. And this first race is going to be the race that they're going to start really learning how to use the system. So what I'm expecting here is some surprises. You know we saw breakthroughs last year. We know we've got drivers like Neuville, very hungry. We know we've got Craig Breen in Ford. They're going to push as hard as he can. We know we've got Loeb and Ogier together. There's lots of scores to be settled in this. So I think it's going to be a rally of surprises, some disappointments, some fantastic scenery, and some incredible driving.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, as you said, about them harvesting and then using the energy they've saved up, these rally drivers are having to do this while listening to the navigation notes from the co-drivers, which no one understands but the co-driver and the driver. And I mean no one understands it. Like, they just basically codes of numbers and all this sort of thing. And at the same time, looking to try and to avoid things like leaves, ice, snow, potholes, stuff that you'd find on a normal day-to-day basis, and driving up very tight, twisty mountain roads such as the Col de Torini, which is a famous stage. And of course, it is a very twisty stage. So all of this is what a rally driver has to deal with. And it's why it's one of the best sports, I think, to watch as far as driver skill is concerned, because it's just insane. But yeah, these rally cars, I would say that it's going to be an interesting rally in Monaco, because Monte Carlo, as you said, it's going to be quite warm, which means that if it's anything to go by, it would be the 2020 Monte Carlo rally, where they had like 15, 16 degree temperatures, no ice, bit damp, but they had leaves going into their radiators, which overheated the cars. Maybe they've got to think about that as well. So, you know, it's all to play for. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, because testing, which is just finished for these rally cars at Monaco, was cold, snowy, lots of snow, lots of ice. It was almost Sweden-esque in the way the conditions were. So if it's going to be, as you said, quite warm and mild, then these rally drivers have no experience on Monaco in those conditions. But we'll have a look ahead now to the rest of the season, which for me is brilliantly exciting. Again, you can look up the calendar online or whatever. Let us know what you think across social media about the calendar, because I think it's brilliant. But for you then, Andy, what does Rally Sweden mean?
Rally Sweden means cold, it means dark, it means snow, it means some incredible driving, and it's a great rally in terms of the contrast we're going to see from Monte Carlo in the first round. You know, Sweden, which comes a month later, I think is going to be very different. So it's going to be great. You know, as a spectacle, it's going to be an incredible spectacle to watch.
Yeah, Sweden. I mean, thing I like about Sweden is where they use the snowdrifts to get their cars around the corners. they brush the snowdrifts in such a way that it doesn't suck them in, which snowdrift do. It sucks your car into the drift and you end up having a big accident. But they use it to sort of guide the car around on what is basically snow-covered gravel. So they use studded tyres and they drive incredibly fast. And as you said, it's quite often very dark. And if the fans are allowed, we're waiting to see about that, because I think Monaco, they're very limited on fans. If the fans are there, Sweden is always interesting, because fans have big bonfires in the forest, which adds to the smoke, which adds to the lack of visibility. So you've got all of that to look forward to, and that is the 24th to the 27th of Feb. Now we go to a rally which has featured before, but not massively, Andy. Croatia.
Yeah, Croatia in April. We're going to start to be coming into sort of the start of spring in Europe. Hopefully it's going to be dry. It's going to be a very fast circuit. Again, a very picturesque and tight and twisty circuit. And by that stage, I think as well, we'll be two rallies down. The drivers will have been starting to get used to the way the new cars handle. And I think that's when we're going to start to see things settling down more of a pattern. And maybe we're going to start to see the first hints of who is going to be really contesting for the title in 22.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Croatia it's one of those that it looks like an easy rally. It's almost like a bit of time to relax for the drivers and the teams after you've had Monaco and Sweden, but it really isn't. It will bite you very, very quickly. And then we move to almost a month later to Portugal, which I think, Andy, you can help there explain, is it's not what people would expect in Portugal.
No, I mean, by that stage, it's going to be getting quite warm. I think, pardon my ignorance on this, is there quite a lot of tarmac in Portugal? Is that when we sort of hit the start of the more of the tarmac rallies by the time we get to Portugal?
Normally it would be, yes, but this one is actually, I've looked, is being held on the dusty goat tracks up in the mountains.
Okay.
So that's going to be the interesting bit. That's where you can have all the dust, of course. You've got that bit, little grit, rocks that cause punctures and suspension damage. And I think Portugal might even have more than one, but I think it definitely has one stage which is held in the town, which you get to see all the donuts, and it's all a bit of fun, a bit of a laugh. It's great. And then we go from there into Italy, but it's not Monza, is it, Andy?
No, it's Sardinia. Last year in Sardinia, that was an Ogier win. Evans second and Neuville third. So that's going to be very competitive, because at the moment we don't know what Ogier's season is going to look like. He's not going to be contesting a full season. So by that stage, Evans and Neuville are both going to be sort of pushing very hard, I would have thought, with a lot of experience of that particular country.
Yeah, as I said, Sardinia is obviously twisty mountain roads, tarmac by that stage, but there is a lot of dust on that tarmac. It's going to be, but it's going to be hot more than anything else. You would expect mid to high 30s, maybe even 40s in the middle of June in Sardinia. It's one of those stages that you're going to have beautiful blue sea, blue sky. It's going to look beautiful. And then you're going to have these rally cars tearing around the mountains at 160 kilometres an hour, whatever. And then my favourite last year, Kenya. This was incredible, because in Kenya last year, you had a perfect mix of what Kenya you'd expect. Excuse me. So started off with very, very dusty tracks, very fast, going into open, basically savannah. You had the animals running next door. It was lovely. And then the rains fell. As Toto would say, the rains of Africa. It bucketed it down. And it meant that very quickly it went from very, very dry, sandy gravel to what was basically quagmire. And it was they really struggled. And I think this year we could have it again, falling around my birthday, so brilliant. We're 23rd, 26th of June, so you never know what you're going to get. You know, are you going to get very fast, very dusty little tracks running through the forests and open plains of Kenya? Or are you going to get very wet, very muddy, maybe even puddles like we had in the 80s with those rally cars going through these big muddy puddles and all that sort of thing? It's not quite like that. They don't modify the cars quite that much, but it's something that teams have to consider with.
I think Kenya as well as a spectacle is definitely one of the highlights of the season, isn't it? I mean, some of the roads that they are driving down are very tough tracks, as you say, can get very dusty, and the cars take huge amounts of punishment there. So, you know, if you're going to follow any rally particularly closely in 22, the Safari Rally Kenya is definitely one to follow carefully.
Yes, definitely is. And yeah, it is. It's one of those ones where you watch it on their on dash, and you're thinking, really, slow down, stop, no, too late. You know, it's great, and it's also where I wouldn't say you'd lose the rally, but you could really dent your championship hopes if something goes wrong there. We then head to Estonia, where obviously last year had that amazing performance of Robin Perez. Can he do it again this year? That's the question. He's in a new car, even though it is still with Toyota. He's with a team he knows. He's all this, and he knows the tarmacs well from last year. So that will be very, very interesting. That's on the 14th, 17th of July. We then go to Finland. Now, Finland, I love, and it's to describe it. I think it's basically, you go through forests far too fast with huge deep gullies that will eat cars either side, trees that will stop cars at an instant either side, and big blind crests around every corner. Andy, what does Finland mean to you?
Well, it's kind of the spiritual home of modern day rallying, isn't it? Finland, with some of the great drivers that have come from there, and as you say, it eats cars up. You know, it's very, very fast. You make a slight mistake, you go offline, something is going to get damaged. So it's where really kind of skill and precision and car management really come into their own in Finland.
Yeah, and then we get to the unknown. Round 9 in WRC is still to be confirmed. And we have some breaking news for you on Motorsport Radio that broke at lunchtime today. So it is very, very fresh. But the Ulster Rally will not be taking place in that spot. It has been rumoured for months that the Ulster will take place in round 9. It was the favourite. But the organiser, Bob Willis, has said he cannot find the £2 million needed to fund Rally Ulster. So Rally Ulster will not be taking place in 2022, but he has said he is almost definite that it will take place in 2023. The FIA are not willing to speculate about what else is on the sort of nominating list. As they said, they'd much rather make a statement on the guaranteed finale. So they're drawing up contracts for a number of rallies, and we should find out in the next month or so what will take place in round 9, but it will be a tarmac rally. So, you know, you think for all the rallies, it will be a tarmac rally. My guess, Monza. I reckon Monza will be back. Monza has been a success in 2020 and 2021. 2022, it is in August, so whether they will put Monza down the order and move the rest up, move it around the calendar, whatever, or maybe it won't be Monza, who knows. But I think the reason why Monza wasn't there was because of where it is in the year of Monza. It's just before Formula One, you know. So I don't know, Andy. I think it's going to be tough. I think squeezing Monza in there, because Monza is a very busy circuit with things on there most weekends. So I think that's going to be a real struggle to
get it in there. It's a great shame about Ulster. It just shows that, even with a spectacle of the scale of WRC, you can still struggle to get the funding to promote it. So let's see. I'd be intrigued to see what goes in there.
But it does unfortunately mean there is no Rally GB since COVID. 2019 was the last time it was held in Wales. It wasn't held in Wales because of COVID in 2020. And 2021, 2022, they were like, Wales were unwilling to host it again because of COVID. The Northern Ireland Tourist Board were like, we'll think about it if we can get the funding. And unfortunately, that's not taken place. So, you'll hear it here first. As soon as we know, you will know. But we'll move to arguably one of the most car-killing rallies on the calendar. And Greece on the 8th of September.
Yeah, the Acropolis Rally. I mean, along really with the Safari, one of the most iconic rallies on the calendar, with a beautiful backdrop of ancient Greece. But the roads around there are absolutely brutal, and it takes a huge a toll on the cars. And I think, if I'm right, did Rovan Pera get his second win of the year there last year in 21?
I think so, yeah.
In Greece. And I think this is when I think we're getting towards the business end of the season, that the teams would have got the new cars really dialed in. And I think that is going to be an incredibly close contest when we get to Greece in early September.
And Greece will be one of those where the championship will be lost, because I can guarantee you there will be punctures, because the Acropolis Hills, obviously, the tracks they run along is basically laid by landslides. So you've just got huge lumps of rocks laying in the middle of the road. And any one of those rocks will puncture those tyres in an instant, and your rally is pretty much over, because they're long stages as well. That's the thing. They're not 5-6 kilometres, they're 30-40 kilometres long. You can't do that on a punctured tyre. So it is just genuinely one of those stages which every driver hates but loves at the same time. And then we go to one of the brand new rallies taking place, New Zealand, on the 29th of September to the 2nd of October. New Zealand, Northern Ireland, very, very nice area, very, very foresty area, very, very dusty tracks, incredibly dusty. Dustier even in Australia, and that's saying something. They're actually very cambered. The tracks they use have got dramatic cambered corners. So that will be interesting, whether, how the cars will be unsettled going from corner to corner. At New Zealand as well, when it rains, it really rains. And that's where the difficulty will be the weather. But we will be heading into their summer. And then we go to Spain in October, Andy.
Yeah, Rally to Catalunya, or Rally Catalunya de España. And then that is the penultimate round. That's really going to be the business end of the season. Whether it's Spain, it's southern Spain, it's October, could be very warm, could be a beautiful late summer, or we could see some rain. So, by that stage, I think it's going to be really interesting to see who's competitive on the tracks of Spain.
Yes, and then we go to the biggest unknown of them all, which is Rally Japan, which hasn't been held on WRC for many, many years. Famous Fuji Hills, where you see all those drifters sliding up and down those hills every night. It's going to be incredible. And more importantly, Takamoto Katsuta has grown up rallying those roads. So that could be a big, big surprise.
I think it's going to be fantastic to see the World Rally Championship go back to Japan. I know that Japan were very disappointed that the event couldn't take place in 2021. They're very keen to see the championship back in Japan. They said when it was announced that the date was changing, that they really want to use this event to try and infuse young people in Japan into car culture and motorsport, which I thought was interesting because I thought that was already embedded in there, but apparently not. So I think they're going to put a lot of effort to make sure that is a beautifully presented rally. It's the last round of the season. Clearly, they're hoping we're going to be going to it as the season finale, as a title decider. The backdrop is going to be spectacular, and that is going to be an incredible event.
It will be, and I mean, Japan. It's strange to me when they say that they want to try and get the motorsport culture into the young people, and you're thinking, because I'm thinking, well, Japan's full of youngsters. They, as far as I know, the Japanese Drifting Championship, the Formula Drift Championship, is full of Japanese youngsters coming in. You know, we've got Japanese single-seaters coming in everywhere, Japanese motorbike riders, but they're obviously still struggling for motorsport drivers somewhere. But so, yeah. And then we go to so we're going to run through the order quickly, just for people to follow, and we'll have a discussion there. But we'll go through. So if you haven't watched rallying before, there are 3 manufacturers to watch out for. You've got a Toyota Yaris, Hyundai i20, and a Ford Puma, all running a 520 1 horsepower, 1.6 litre turbo hybrid engine built by M Sport, and it's going to be fast. I mean, they are basically, as I was saying before the show started, they're basically Group B rally cars now. When you think of Group B had 450 horsepower, 4-wheel drive, and we thought that was crazy. We're now looking at a season with nearly 600 horsepower, 4-wheel drive monsters doing these rally stages. It's Group B again, isn't it?
It is, and of course, you know, we know the incredible torque that you can get out of an electric motor, and I think it is really going to change the dynamic. They're going to have almost more power than they know what to do with in certain stages. So as a spectacle, I know some of the drivers were a little bit kind of, you know, this is a bit of a retrograde step, but I think once they understand how to use the equipment, it's going to be just as spectacular and just as competitive as it's always been.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look through the lineup, so you've got Toyota's lineup, we've got OGA, who's running a sort of short program season this year, so he's only running a few rallies. We don't know 100% which runs he'll turn up with, how many he'll do, but he is a defending champion, which means this season, theoretically, there should be a new champion. I doubt very much OGA will be able to win after missing out on a couple of rallies. We've then got Elfin Evans, runner-up twice, surely odds-on favourite to win the rallies, win the championship this year. He's brilliant. He's, I believe, the son of Gwyndaf Evans, who is a multiple British rally champion and rallying legend from Wales. Great driver, Elfin Evans. Whenever you see him rallying, he has this really weird stance where he looks almost like he's falling asleep. And he's doing amazing things with the car, looking more than bored. He looks genuinely relaxed, which is saying something. Rovanperä, obviously taught by Halli Rovanperä, legend himself. He knows what he's doing. He's won rally last year. And then we've got Esa Pekka-Lappi, who is another strong young Finnish driver. So Andy Lloyd, obviously Toyota, strong lineup. Would you say that Elfin Evans is odds-on favourite to win the championship this year?
Well, he's got to be amongst the front runners. I mean, Toyota is a very strong team. You know, we've just seen what they've done in the Dakar. They know that Yaris very well. They understand using hybrid technology very well. They're not going to come into this unprepared. Not having Ogier there for a full season, and certainly Ogier with a new co-driver as well, that's going to make the team feel a little bit maybe unbalanced. They're going to need to sort of feel their way a bit with the new pairings that they've got. With Rovanperä, as we discussed on multiple occasions, as the young up-and-coming star, you know, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Evans, but Evans has got a lot of experience. He's very hungry for this, and you've got to say that, you know, if he doesn't win it, he's certainly going to finish in the top 3.
Yeah, definitely. I think Toyota are as strong as they were last year. If anything, even stronger, because you've got the likes of Lappi, Rovanperä and Katsuta, who have all getting experience and are all becoming really good rally drivers. So that one's something to look out for. For the Ford Puma, we've got almost a bit of a Team GB vibe of Ford. Obviously, Ford based in the UK as well. We've got Gus Greensmith, who finally is getting a big full-term rally contract, which is something good for him. We've got Adrian Formeau, who struggled last year in the Ford, and I think he wants to show his critics more than anything else that he deserves that place. Got Craig Breen, who really did well in the Belgian Rally Ypres. Bearing in mind Ford struggled a lot in that rally. Craig Breen drove that Ford beyond its limits by quite a way and almost won it. And then, of course, we've got one of the biggest shock signings I think any team could have ever had, and that is the return of the legend Sebastian Loeb, who was a test driver for Hyundai last year. The biggest shock, of course, was the fact that Ford took him from Hyundai, and Hyundai didn't take him on for a full contract. He's currently got 9 WRC Drivers' Championships, but Andy, has he got a good chance of making it 10?
Well, I mean, he's certainly, although, you know, he hasn't had a full-time WRC drive now for some seasons, he's certainly, you know, he's been very active. He's had outings in numerous other championships, including, I think, his Extreme E. So I don't think he would have lost it. Of course, with the new technologies coming in this year and a more level playing field, he's probably got more of a chance to establish himself than he might have done if this was 2021. The first couple of rallies will tell, but I think it's still there, and I think he's going to impress a lot of people. Certainly at Monte Carlo.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's exciting for me to see Sebastian Loeb back in rallying, and you know, it's gonna. I am looking forward to a Loeb versus Elfin Evans showdown throughout the rallies. I think that's going to be the big one there. If Ford get their act together, they've struggled the last number of seasons, and it's about time they did get their act together. So we'll wait and see. Hyundai, they've got another strong signing. Oliver Solberg, he did a few rallies last year and a few rallies the season before. He has shone brilliantly in Rally 2. Peter Solberg's son, he's, I'm sure, Andy, you've seen him a few times at Goodwood. And the car control he shows there is astonishing.
Well, we're talking about his dad, Petter.
And Oliver, they both the hill climb, didn't they?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it is. I mean, and that hill climb is tight, and they don't hang around. So that's a great move for Hyundai to get Oliver in there. But of course, alongside that, you've got Oates Tanak and Thierry Neuville, both very established campaigners now, and you've got to think that if Hyundai can overcome some of the fragility of the machinery that we saw in 2021, that they could really be challenging for the title.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we'd expect Tanak and Neuville being the 2 Hyundai drivers to take the championship on. You know, as much as Oliver Solberg is a great driver and has shone brilliantly when he's rallied, you can't really expect him to do that well on his debut season. You know, he's got a new car to understand, new rallies to take on. He's young, he's inexperienced. So I think it's Tanak and Neuville, but Tanak and Neuville is a very good attack to have, let's face it. And bear in mind, they've only got 3 drivers. They've got a lot more resources to use on these 3 drivers. They've got less drivers to face it on. But I'll ask you a question, Andy. Mm-hmm. Who will win more rallies Ogier, who's only competing in a few, or Loeb?
If I was going to bet on it, I'd probably say Ogier. I think with the momentum that he's got and what he's bringing into this season, I think there's probably more of a chance you're going to see him shine. Certainly if it was just over the first half of the season. So, yeah, my money would be on Ogier.
I mean, it makes you think they should really have a French rally, shouldn't they? Bear in mind they've got 2 French rallying greats taking part, potentially. If you could have a French rally put in that round 9, and you have Ogier and Loeb in France battling for the championship, that would be incredible.
Yeah, and also you could have a French championship where you mix up rallying, racing GT cars, and then you put them in a Formula E car as well, and see who comes out on top of that, because they've both got, significant experience in other series. So yeah, I mean, great talents.
Okay, next one. For the Team GB, for British, who should we expect to do better? Evans or Breen?
I think, on paper, of course, you'd say Evans. But I think Breen is very, very hungry for this. We've seen how hard he's been pushing ahead of Monte Carlo. He had a big accident a few days ago, which, thankfully he and Paul Nagel walked away from. But the car has probably seen better days. He really wants this, and he knows the opportunity that he's been given, and he understands the opportunity with new regulations, new car, level playing field to really push ahead. So I think Breen has a very good chance of finishing ahead of Evans in the championship.
Yeah, I think I want Evans to win this year's championship. I genuinely want him to win, and that's who I'm supporting, Elfin Evans. So who do you think will win the Monte Carlo Rally?
I think it could be anybody. I think everybody's got a chance at this one. I'm going to stick my neck out, and I'm going to say Neuville in the Hyundai.
Nice. Okay, for me, I'm going to go for Elfin Evans. He's done well in the previous years at Monaco, and the Toyota has always shown it's got pace. So I think Evans could do it this year with Ogier potentially not completing in Monaco. I think Elfin Evans has got a clean run to the title. But who do you think will take the overall title?
I think it's probably going to stay with Toyota. I think there's a chance that Rovanperä could surprise us. I think he could maintain the momentum that he built up in 21, and it's only going to take a couple of results, and he's really going to get the bit between his teeth, and he could really push hard. I think the championship could, Evans or Rovanperä, I think is probably where it's going to finish.
See, as much as I'd like to agree with you with Evans, there's a romantic in me that wants Loeb, that wants 10. He's driving for Ford, 25th year in the sport, 50th year of WRC. About time he got his 10th WRC title.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go for Loeb. You've already answered my next question, which was going to be, which manufacturer do you think will take the constructors? You think Toyota. Why would you think Toyota?
Well, I just think that the depth of experience they've got at racing at this level, the success that they've seen, the success that they've made in other series, I just think they're such an incredible machine for producing competitive race cars. But Ford could still surprise us. If maybe Ford have got it right, they can hit a sweet spot, and a bit like Brawn all those years ago in Formula One. So they're going to take a couple of good results at the start of the season, and everybody else is going to be playing catch up. So, but it's difficult to bet against Toyota.
Yeah, I agree. I think Toyota will have it. They've got a very strong lineup, and I think they've got so much experience behind them. Not experience fighting for the title. You know, you've got, as I said, you've got Elfin Evans, who's fought for the title the last couple of years, and then you've got I can't remember the Japanese bloke's name now. You've got him. You've got Katsuta competing as well, and Lappi, who's also competed in the past. So you've got some good drivers that have competed well for the top 5, top 4s, and I think that's what would have it. So you've got one contender, but you've got 3 good top 5 finishers there. So Ford and Honda got it really, really, really all to play for. But let us know your thoughts on Facebook, Twitter, social media, YouTube, whatever. You know, who do you think will win Monaco on Sunday? Who do you think, all the way over in Japan in the end of the year, who do you think will take the title on 2022 and the first Rally 1 title? But next, we're going to go to some very big news, and I think news that Andy Lloyd obviously knows a bit more about. So I'll let you take over with the first big story, which is a bit, I don't know, worrying, I suppose.
Well, if you're referring to Peugeot at Sebring, I think I don't think it's worrying, because I think Peugeot know the direction they're going, but clearly that they've announced that they're not going to compete at Sebring, the opening round of the FIA World Endurance Championship. The FIA are very keen to move away from entrance at the highest level, picking and choosing the rounds that they're going to compete at. They haven't been happy with teams in the past finishing their seasons at Le Mans and deciding not to do the rest of the year, because let's face it, probably most people would like just to do maybe Spa and then Le Mans. So they've made it very clear that if you want to enter the championship, you've got to compete at either Sebring or Spa. So the pressure is now on Peugeot to get that car to Spa. We know that it's been testing at Motorland Aragon, and it's been testing in the wingless configuration, because when the car was announced, if you remember, there was no rear wing, and much was made of this, and much was made of the fact that this is probably more for show purposes, and actually when it came to racing they would put a wing on it, but the car was testing without a wing. So I think they're just being very cautious. They don't want to ship the car out to Sebring to find they're trying to drive around problems. So they've taken the decision we think they've taken the decision to wait until Spa. We shall have to see if they declare to race there. But I think it's going to be worth waiting for. It's a spectacular looking car. It's great that we're seeing those new cars coming into hypercar, and it's a car we're all looking forward to, hopefully seeing at Le Mans this year. But a surprising move nonetheless, bearing in mind the lead time that Peugeot have had up to the start of this season. Yeah, I mean the biggest question I want to ask about this is, would you say Peugeot are sandbagging by not showing their hand at Sebring, ready for Le Mans, and they've always known they're going to compete at Spa, ready because they've got to compete at Spa to enter in Le Mans? Would you say that by it not going to Sebring, it's a bit of sandbagging? It's a bit of, we're not going to let Toyota and Glickenhaus and that know how quick we are until right at the last moment? Somehow I doubt it, because I think you can spot sandbagging, and I think they would very quickly be brought to task if that were the case. No, I genuinely think this is quite a revolutionary car. Clearly, in the aero configuration, they just need more time to make sure they're going down the right route with it. So I don't think, and plus the fact Peugeot understand the significance of them returning to the highest level of endurance and prototype racing, and they wouldn't want to cheapen that with any accusations of sandbagging when they get to Le Mans. Yeah,
because obviously with them, I mean, surely Peugeot has to compete at Spa, because the thought of them, I mean, how big a miss will it be if Peugeot did not compete for outright honours at Le Mans?
Well, certainly, I think it would be. I don't think it would be the end of the world. I think people would understand that this is the start of a multi-year program, but at the same time, we've missed having a real battle at the top now for some seasons. That everybody wants to see that hypercar class full of quality entrants. So it would be a great shame if we didn't see that at Le Mans, but I think we will. I think Peugeot will be competitive. They're not sandbagging, and it's going to be. I mean, we say it many times. It's going to be interesting. Of course, it is. But given the time that Toyota have been developing their car to where it is today, and Peugeot being a new entrant, that is going to be a really interesting battle.
I mean, it shows just how much testing Peugeot are doing, and this all not going to Sebring for more testing. I think they've said they want to do another testing program while Sebring is taking place, ready for Le Mans. Shows just how serious Peugeot are. The fact they don't just want to be at Le Mans, but they want to compete at Le Mans, even compete for outright honours against Toyota. So I think it was sort of, when I first read it, I was like, oh, hang on, this is not good. You know, another hypercar struggling and all this sort of stuff. But the more I read into it, the more I think, well, actually, hang on a minute. This could be good for the sport in the long run, because Peugeot will arrive bit like Glickenhaus, where they arrived with a competitive car rather than arriving and being 30 seconds off the pace and it looking embarrassing. We could have at Spa 24 a big contest between Glickenhaus, Toyota and Peugeot for the title, which could be quite exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be, you know, when they get, we're racing for 24 hours at Spa, but, you know, when they get to Spa, that is going to be a fantastic race, and it's going to give us a really good clue as to what is going to happen at Le Mans. But of course, you know, this again, as we've just said, is the first season for Peugeot. They've not put this car through a season's racing. They've not put it through a 24-hour race. I'm sure they've done multiple simulations, multiple 24-hour runs in the car, but not in actually in a race weekend. So there's still a lot to learn about that car. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be amazing when we get there, definitely.
Yeah, and then we've also got some other hypercar news in WEC, and that is that WRC has announced a full grid, but have rejected another LMP8 hypercar. So, Andy, why do they only want 6 cars in the top class?
I don't think they do.
I think we seem to have a little bit of an issue. Yeah, but yeah, I'll go into the news story. The Coles hypercar entry, which is due to take part in this season, has been rejected by WEC. Oh, he's back. Do you want to continue what you're saying, then, Andy?
Oh, sorry. No, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think it was, you know, what I've read is that it was a documentation issue. It doesn't quite add up, to be honest. It really doesn't. So I think we need to wait until we've got some more information about what has happened with this rejection. Certainly it's surprised by Collis, because they thought that once they paid their entry fee and they had a car, that effectively they were in, and that doesn't appear to be the case. You know, that's been not exactly a trouble-free run to get that car onto the grid. So they must be very disappointed now. But yes, I mean, reading here that it's not completed its homologation process. So clearly there's something not quite right with the paperwork on that entry, which the WEC want to look at further. But it is disappointing because it was a car that we were all looking forward to seeing.
Will this therefore mean then that the top category will not be competitive and will almost take second stage to the LMP2 and GT categories?
Well, I think we always knew that this year was going to be a sort of a growing year. The LMP2 category, of course, is huge, and it's going to be hugely competitive, and the racing there is going to be fantastic. I think it's only going to be when we get to the LMDH era and we start getting LMDH cars coming over into Europe for Le Mans that we're really going to see that master plan unfold, and that top class being as full and as competitive, as exciting as we all want it to be. I fully expect that the Le Mans this year, that the real racing action is going to be in the LMP2 class, without a doubt. It depends, how competitive Peugeot are when they turn up, and we want them to be competitive, but I really can't see them toppling Toyota this year. And the racing is going to be in P2, but I think it really is going to be from 2023 onwards that we're really going to see that class start to fill out, and some proper racing at the top of the grid.
Yeah, and then we've got some big Intercontinental GT Challenge news, and I think this is quite sad, because the Intercontinental GT Challenge, they couldn't complete the championship last year because Kyle Army got postponed, and now it looks like they can't start 2022 either, because New South Wales has announced that it is pushing the Bathurst 12-hour race back to May due to the COVID spikes they've had in the area. So, Andy, obviously Australia is the other side of the world, completely different seasons. Their summer is our winter, etc., etc. So February, end of their summer. May, starting towards their winter. So what would this mean for this 12-hour legendary race?
Well, we're going to see the same challenges that we saw over the last two seasons, with Le Mans being pushed to later in the year, and the Spa 24 in 2020 being pushed towards the end of the year. The nights are longer, the temperatures are cooler, the track's more grippy, and if you're not careful, it puts a lot more stress on the cars, and you get more accidents. Plus the fact that you are pushing that particular race more into the sort of like the real start of racing in both Europe and in America. And a lot of drivers are going to go, well, I've got conflicting commitments now. So I think from logistics, scheduling, more driving in the dark, cooler temperatures, it's going to be a real challenge. Plus the fact, I think it's disappointing for sports car racing fans, because typically you look forward to the start of the season, which is typically Raw before the 24, Daytona 24, then a week or two afterwards the Bathurst, and then we really start. Then you got a bit of a break, then it's Sebring, and then you're starting to look forward to the start of the European season, which we're not going to see this year. So I think it takes away something, but there's nothing we can do about it. The whole world has fought this problem now for the last 2 years, and you just got to roll with it. But I think as well is to be thankful that hopefully this race is going to go ahead, because it's a race that the sports car racing fraternity really loves. I mean, it's on my bucket list of things to do, to go out and see the Bathurst. So I hope it goes ahead, and I hope it's a great success, but it is going to be a challenge.
One last question that I think a lot of people will now be asking: what's going to happen to the Intercontinental GT Challenge with the 2021 season not being, it was still being open due to the fact that Kyle Army was postponed so late on? What will happen with the end of the 2021, who wins, all that sort of stuff, into 2022 with a late start already? Surely this will put teams off entering into the championship and drivers off competing in the championship.
Well, I mean, the Intercontinental GT Challenge is more set up for manufacturers, and the events were to be part of local events. So the Spa 24 was not only part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, but it was part of the GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS championship. I don't think it will put people off necessarily. I think the SRO have done an incredible job over the past 2 seasons getting any kind of racing going ahead. So I think we've got to be thankful that we've had what we've had. And I think the teams and the manufacturers understand that. Let's hope that what we've seen over the last 2 months with the pandemic is the last we see of these big outbreaks and things can start to settle down. So it's just one more season of potential upsets, and then we can look forward to more stable calendars going forward. But I think everybody understands how hard the SRO have worked to get any form of racing going on at all. And they're thankful that we've got what we've got currently.
Yes, and on that note, I think that's a brilliant note to finish. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, contact us on everywhere. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're Amazon Music, Audible, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. So you cannot miss us. Please like us, follow us, tell everyone about us, put it on the side of your car, everything. We want everyone to know about us and to listen to us and to get in contact with this radio show. Thank you so much, Andy Lloyd, for giving us your insight in rallying and then LEN GT and endurance racing. As I said, it's going to be an amazing season for both, and we will be covering it very extensively on Motorsport Radio. But from me, your host, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching in, and good night.
Good night, guys.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Motorsport Radio.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ray from the Kawasaki Racing Team.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Jamie Chadwick.
Hey everyone, Bradley Smith.
Hi, I'm Joan Zarco.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wright.
Hi, I'm Seb Morris.
Hi, I'm Dan Linfoot from Honda Racing, British Superbike team, and this is Motorsport Radio.